A recent incident involving Caitlin Clark has the entire basketball community in disbelief. Additionally, depending on your perspective, this might be the start of a historic power maneuver, or the WNBA is experiencing a fresh storm. Because even though detractors have been discussing her hype and casting doubt on her prominence for months, by analyzing each action she does, Caitlin Clark might have just made a significant enough statement to alter how she will always be viewed by the league. Fans are having a good time. Competitors are observing. Reactions from the media are exploding. Additionally, some people think that this action conveys a message that goes well beyond basketball, that Caitlin Clark is no longer. She is no longer just a rising star. The entire sports world must revolve around her. However, when a single player's effect grows so quickly, adoration is never the only response. Resentment grows, pressure increases, and history demonstrates that when a superstar makes a huge leap, not everyone in the league cheers. The actual shock. What transpired next might perhaps larger. Before this most recent tsunami completely upended the basketball world, Caitlin Clark had already become something much more significant than a typical WNBA rookie. And that's precisely where the emotional strain started. Superstars draw pressure because stars draw attention. However, cultural occurrences are admired. Jealousy, anger, obsession, and the kind of emotional intensity that has the power to totally transform an entire league. Caitlin Clark wasn't just controlling opponents during her last college season at Iowa. She was rewriting the women's basketball's emotional economy. Arenas that are sold out to television viewers who are breaking records. There are endless debating shows. Highlight reels that become viral. Fascination with the national media. Fans who travel between states only. You saw one player fire from almost absurd distances until she made them appear normal. What began as basketball brilliance swiftly grew into a much more significant celebrity power. And people are changed by that type of rise. Supporters were motivated. Overexposure was perceived by critics. Veterans witnessed a rookie getting levels of attention that many top players had been pursuing for years. Executives in the league sensed a chance. Sponsors found gold. What about social media? War was seen on social media. Every performance by Caitlin Clark turned into a battleground for differing viewpoints. Supporters referred to her as transformational when she performed brilliantly. When she faltered, detractors quickly declared, "The hype is fake." Every foul turned into a contentious issue. Every ruling made by the referee became proof of someone's emotional story. Every media outlet turned into a conflict between cultures. The rookie transition followed. And this is when the situation became even more mentally taxing, as getting into the WNBA wasn't meant to be simple. More powerful defenses. Quicker plans. Toughness from veterans. Brutal physicality. Public expectations are almost unachievable. Not necessarily because they detested her personally. There were many who were openly waiting for her to fail. However, because sports culture enjoys trying everyone who is deemed the next great thing. However, rather than crumbling, Clark adjusted. She accepted the blows. She made adjustments. She gained knowledge. And gradually, the narrative shifted from "Can she endure this league?" What would happen if she did take control? Some people were really uncomfortable with that question. Because the emotional terrain changes as a rookie begins to show that she belongs. Anxiety develops from doubt. Defensive resistance is the result of criticism. Rivals begin to understand that the limelight isn't fleeting. And her influence continued to increase off the court. Significant media attention. Booming sales of products. Roadside arenas are packed. Every time her name was mentioned, television ratings skyrocketed. Caitlin Clark was suddenly more than simply a part of the WNBA narrative. She was turning into the narrative that no league could completely control in terms of emotional tension. Because balance is lost when one athlete has such cultural dominance. Colleagues are under pressure. Opponents are under pressure. The leadership of the league is under strain. Stories turn political, and fans turn tribal. And now, following months of emotional build-up, conjecture, adulation, bitterness, and unrelenting public fixation, it seems that Caitlin Clark made such a significant step that even those who believed they understood. It's possible that her ascent misjudged what would happen next. Then came the action that rocked the whole basketball world. Not a shot that would win the game. Not a furious altercation. Not an explosion in the locker room. Something even more significant. Because there was an instant response when the announcement was ultimately made. Outrage, disbelief, celebration, and one awkward question circulated more quickly than anybody could manage. Had Caitlin Clark truly surpassed the WNBA in popularity? Since this wasn't just another significant achievement. This was a cultural earthquake, a declaration, and a change in power. When news broke, followers discovered Caitlin Clark had made a decision that elevated her above typical basketball superstardom and into the public. In American sports culture, recognition is only given to the rarest athletes. All of a sudden, the sports media was talking non-stop. Timelines on social media exploded. Comment sections became battlegrounds for emotions. T was deemed overdue by supporters. It was dubbed overhype by critics. Competitors? Quiet. Silence can sometimes convey a lot of information. Because this is what made it. Emotionally explosive moment. This was no longer just about skill. There are many gifted athletes. Games are dominated by many elite players, but not all of them become cultural influences. Additionally, when a single player passes that line, suppressed feelings start to come to the surface. Some admirers used it as evidence that Caitlin Clark had transformed women's basketball indefinitely. Some posed an even more awkward query. What about the gamers who constructed this league prior to her? The first startling turn of events occurred at that point. What appeared to be a momentous achievement quickly changed into a discussion about politics. Players from the past started to participate in the discussion. Media figures divided into opposing camps. Commentators began to question if Clark's ascent was the result of a media machine or merited greatness, accelerating a single athlete more quickly than anyone in recent memory. The tone of feeling changed quickly. This was no longer a celebration. It was conflict. Because the same emotional crack returns each time Clark hits a new milestone. Inspiration versus recognition of resentment versus growth from overexposure versus imbalance. Followed by the explosion of another story. What does it mean for everyone if Caitlin Clark's impact now extends beyond basketball to this extent? Is there anyone else vying for attention inside the league? Fan wars were immediately sparked by that question. Some claimed that Clark's achievements boost all of them. Others contended that a dangerous imbalance results from one celebrity controlling every conversation. All of a sudden, executives, competitors, colleagues, and media voices were being drawn into speculation. Then came the most combustible portion. Analysts and sources started subtly implying that this significant action wasn't only symbolic acknowledgement. T might be an indication of a more significant change in the real power dynamics in women's basketball. What transpired next threatened to change this from a celebration, if that perception is even somewhat accurate. Becomes a full-fledged emotional conflict. To this point, the narrative ceased to seem joyous and began to feel like a struggle for dominance. Because when the emotional shock of Caitlin Clark's significant relocation subsided, the talk became much riskier after that. Individuals were no longer only responding to the announcement. They were responding to the power it represented. Control and influence. Additionally, those three words can break in professional sports. Whole ecosystems. Fan communities quickly divided into opposing factions as social media took off. One side said that this was indisputable evidence that Caitlin Clark had emerged as the most revolutionary force that women's basketball hasn't experienced in decades. The opposing side vigorously retaliated, alleging sponsors and media networks of establishing a setting where a single player's attention had grown to such an extent that it was engulfing everyone else. Then came the second big twist. Fan sentiment was no longer the only factor in this. Prominent figures began to respond. Analysts and former athletes, national athletes, and each response served as fire. Some hailed Clark's ascent as historic and past due. Others made thoughtful remarks that initially appeared encouraging. However, viewers saw the underlying dissatisfaction right away. To that point, paranoia entered the dialogue. Because everything gets suspicious when viewers begin looking for emotional undertones. A comment that is neutral turns into a covert offense. Silence turns into envy. Appreciation turns into political harm. Command Abruptly, the discussion on basketball turned into psychological warfare. The rumors in the locker room followed. What do seasoned athletes actually say in private? Do younger celebrities feel motivated or subtly irritated? Does the constant circus surrounding Clark's stardom make teammates feel proud or under pressure? No one had definitive answers. However, speculation can proliferate without evidence. Then a second, really unpleasant layer appeared. League politics. Because business conversations shift when an athlete gains such commercial power. Priorities for broadcasts shift. Changes in marketing strategy. Changes in scheduling pressure. The dynamics of sponsorship shift. Due to Caitlin Clark's influence, several fans asked a topic that league management never wants to come up.